Welcome to the Time to Fly podcast. It's time to give your business wings and take flight to achieve more impact, influence, and income with unique perspectives, tools, and tips from successful entrepreneurs and business professionals to help your business fly. Here to educate, encourage, and entertain you with their own unique perspectives and experience, plus sharing anecdotes of growing up as cowgirls. Here's your host, Nikole Haumont.
Welcome to the Time to Fly podcast. I'm your host, Nikole Haumont, here today visiting with my co-host, Jill Fleming. Jill Fleming is the founder of Beyond Logic Coaching and Consulting, and you can find out more about what she does at livingbeyondlogic.com. Today, we're actually going to be talking about the comparison trap. Whether you're an entrepreneur or a business professional, this can happen to you. You're looking through things, you're meeting people, and you see what they're doing and you think, oh, I should do that too. But instead of taking action, you shut down and you don't do anything. So Jill, talk to us a little bit more about this comparison trap, what it is and how you can get out of it.
Yeah, the comparison trap is such a huge issue that a lot of people run into as they're going to start a business, as they're looking to up level. If you're in a career, you're looking at what other people are doing, and we compare. We just naturally compare ourselves. In our society, we tend to just compare ourselves to others. What happens is, say you're a brand new business and you admire someone else and how they're doing their business, and you're seeing how they're doing it and it looks so amazing. And then you're like, oh, you know what? I'll never be as good as they are. Or, oh, I don't know how to do that. Or looking at how that is and realizing you judge yourself inadequate in some way of what this other person is doing, and all the energy of all that you're building can just get shut off.
In a graphic way, you're looking at the very tip of the iceberg of what this other person has done, but you're not seeing everything underneath the water that they've done, all the struggles, all their thing. So you're comparing what you're going through to that top pinnacle of success. Is that accurate?
Yes, in some way. What I liken it to too is, if you look at the education system, your son right now just started kindergarten.
Correct. Yes.
And so if you were thinking of yourself as a kindergartner, as you're just starting a business, you've decided that you want to start a business. So guess what? You're just starting business boot camp, business school. So you're a kindergartner in the business cycle. You wouldn't put your son, a kindergartner, up against somebody who is a PhD and expect them to be at a PhD level, would you?
No, there's so much learning to do, and there's quite a steep curve there.
So that's what we often do, is you go out to start a business, and then you compare yourself to somebody who's been in business for 10 or 12 or 15 years, then look at yourself as being inadequate. And you don't see that as a kindergartner in business or as a fifth grader in business, that you're at the level you're at. There's a process, there's an evolution. As you are in business, from someone who is just launching their business to somebody that's been in business from 2 to 5 years, to somebody who's been in business for 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, there's different levels that you're at. And it's so unfair to yourself, fall into that comparison trap of someone who's 2 to 5 years in business, comparing themselves to somebody that's a large corporation and has 20 or 50 or 100 employees, and you're a solopreneur, or maybe you have a few people on your team that are helping to build your business.
In real life, you see these people, but these could be people you see online who have, let's say, thousands of followers, and you think they're more successful than you. They may not have it all put together, even though online it looks like it. Is that a comparison that you see people doing a lot too?
Absolutely. The comparison trap falls into a lot of what we see online and in social media and in marketing. That is the leveraged message that you want to go out to your clients, showing that you do have it all together and, hey, we are a great business. And oftentimes, if you look under the hood, so to speak, there's a lot of struggle and a lot of different education and learning and things that have gone into being able to do that. And so just like you're as a kindergartner, as a fifth grader, you wouldn't compare yourself to somebody who's in college Be where you're at. I don't remember who said it, but said, don't be 40 until you're 40. So if you're in your 20s, you're going to be at a different level. If you're in your 30s, you're going to be at a different level. If you're in your 40s, you're going to be at a different level. Don't try to skip the process, because there is a process in everything of building your business, of building your career. If you're gotten to a certain level and you see that somebody who's at an advisor level and you're still at an associate level and you're comparing yourself, yes, are there things that you can do to position yourself to be more prepared for that? Absolutely. But there's a process to things. And the comparison trap is when you are the fifth grader comparing yourself to somebody who's at a PhD level and seeing yourself as inadequate. And that is absolutely not true. We all have our process. We all have those steps we need to take to learn and to grow and to educate ourselves and be in that process for where you're at. That's why I always recommend people doing masterminds or doing groups where people are at the same level, so that they have an understanding of people who are at a same phase of business usually are going through the same issues and the same problems in their business or in their career. And so there's camaraderie there of getting past those issues. If you're at a $100,000 business, comparing yourself to $1 million business, it's just not fair. And you guys are in different places and you're creating different things. And doing that shuts down that creative energy in your own business of seeing that as just not achievable. So when I'm working with people, that's one of the big things that I do with my clients. Be in your own lane. You are running your own race. If you're wanting to be a $100,000 business, you are not running a race against a business that's already in the $1 million race. You're running your own race. What are the things that you can do? What are the things that you like to do that can build your business? Or if you're wanting to get a promotion in your career, what are those things that you can do to advance yourself in your own race, as opposed to looking over at the other lane and trying to see what everybody else is doing, so that you probably will trip and fall. I always remember the last Olympics, there was a swimming race, and you have a picture of one person coming up out of the swim, looking over at the other lane, and that person came in second because they were focusing on what the other people are doing, as opposed to running your own race, staying in your own lane, and getting out of the comparison trap.
Well, and success is different for each person. So for me, success to me is generating a healthy income in a limited amount of time so I can spend time with my family and friends. When you're looking at other people and people are comparing there, it's totally different when you are running businesses. You have clients that have done multi-million-dollar businesses. You also have clients who are looking to transition from working for somebody else to starting their own business. As you and I've talked about, success does leave clues. And when we come back from our sponsor break, we're going to talk about some of those clues to look for. And Jill's going to share some of her strategies of how to get there and how you can achieve and level up to your next level. Like Jill says, whether you're a kindergartner or a fifth grader or you're in college or above, you can get there. So we're going to take a quick sponsor break and we'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Beyond Logic Coaching and Consulting with strategist, visionary, entrepreneur, and best-selling author Jill Fleming. Get your free gift at livingbeyondlogic.com.
Welcome back. We are here visiting with Jill Fleming from Beyond Logic Coaching and Consulting. Jill, before the break, we were talking about how success leaves clues. And in your coaching and consulting practice, you help people get to that next level. Can you share a strategy with us about that person who wants to stay in their lane and level up to the next spot in their business?
Well, what I found is usually when people come to me, they're kind of in a tailspin. They've probably been comparing themselves to somebody else. They're probably feeling very overwhelmed and they're kind of in a tailspin and they're needing clarity. They're not quite sure what the next steps they are wanting to take are. And so I'm kind of the wing woman that comes in and helps get them out of that tailspin and flying straight towards a target of where they want to go. And I help get that clarity for them of figuring out what are those targets, what are those goals that they want to reach that are in alignment and are congruent with the life they want to create. That is one of the big things of what we talked about before the break. Sometimes you don't want to be $1 million business. There are requirements and sacrifices needed to be made to be $1 million business. So maybe you're going to be happy at a $500,000 business or a $100,000 business because that business contributes to what you're trying to create, having more work-life balance. And so those are things that I work with my clients on to figure out what are their values, what are their strengths, what is it they truly desire to create that's going to create a holistic lifestyle for them. I liken it to coming out of a studio apartment and figuring out what you want to create in your custom built house and business, so that you figure out what are all the components that you want to have in it. And so one of the strategies that I use is getting really clear on what your values are. If you are not congruent with your values in whatever you're doing in your life, whether it is your business or if you are a career professional, if you're not congruent with your values, it's not going to feel right. So like for you, Nikole, you said that your family is your number one priority. If your business grew to a level where they were no longer your priority and you were having to travel and you were having to miss things with your son, it wouldn't feel right for you, right? You would have some dissatisfaction. You wouldn't have that happiness that you're looking for of having your family be that number one priority. And a lot of times the biggest clue that I can give you is creating those boundaries and having priorities, especially when I work with women entrepreneurs, business owners, and professionals. Oftentimes we have our priorities out of whack, that we've reprioritized in a way that isn't congruent with our values. And a lot of times it's just putting some boundaries in place to reprioritize those priorities so they are congruent with our values.
So let's say you're a person who's introverted and you want to set these boundaries. How do you go about expressing that to people? What tools can you put in place?
One of the best resources that I've found is there's a book that's called Boundaries that has a lot of great tips and tricks on ways that you can start implementing boundaries in your life. When I'm working one-on-one with my clients or working with my groups, we go through those strategies and help them to put those in place and to know what to expect. One of the things I always share when you haven't had boundaries is expect some retaliation or some pushback. Because if you haven't had boundaries in your life and you start implementing boundaries, people around you are going to be like, whoa, wait a minute, what just happened here? And they're probably going to be upset and they probably will have some pushback. And you have to stay steadfast in those boundaries. And also knowing that no is a complete sentence. You do not have to give an explanation.
How do you get from being the yes person that you say, yes, I'll help with this, yes, I'll help with that? With me, Lincoln just starting his school career, I know PTA is on the horizon. I know all the sporting events are on the horizon. We're already doing fundraisers. How do you build yourself up to even telling strangers no?
Well, that's one of the things is when you get really clear on what your priorities are. When you know what those priorities are, then you know what's not congruent with those. Of, hey, if I say yes to this obligation that's not congruent with what my top 3 priorities are, then I'm stealing from my family. I'm stealing from my business and whatever the other priority is. When you're really clear on it, you test the energy of something against what your priorities are. And if it's like, oh, that's not going to be contributing to what my priorities are, then that's a no. And getting more comfortable with that, it takes practice. Everything is like building a muscle. It does take practice. It's hard when you first start, but as you start doing it, it gets easier and easier and easier. And as you start to have the things that you say that you want and those values and those priorities in your life, and you have that congruence of really having what you desire to have, it becomes so easy to say no to things that aren't a contribution.
I know something that you and I have discussed before is whether something feels heavy or light. Is that something that you still practice and that you teach to your people? How do you explain that?
Everything is energy. And so everything has an energy to it. Once you get really clear on what your priorities are and what your values are, well, I walk through a process of being able to feel the energy of what's light and what's heavy. So think about having to go see your favorite person and have coffee with them and get to spend the afternoon with them at one of your favorite places that's absolutely beautiful. If you feel the energy of that, it's usually light and kind of expansive. There's an expansion to it. Now think of that person who is an energy vampire. They just drain you. Whenever you're around them, they just drain you and you leave feeling exhausted. Now think of going to see that person and feel how contractive and how heavy that is. So that is building a muscle too, of being able to tune into the energy of something and feeling if it's light or if it's heavy and how that's going to contribute to you. Once you really are sure what your priorities are and what your values are, when things come along, you can tune into the energy of it and, okay, is this going to be light and be a contribution to what I'm trying to do? Or is this going to be heavy, going to take away from what I'm trying to create? Does that make sense?
It does. You know, we've talked about this before, and there's definitely things I've asked myself, do I truly want to do this or not? Mm-hmm. And so setting those boundaries and checking in with yourself, whether, you know, you consider it a gut instinct or whatever, that's important. And the tools that you've shared with me are tools that everybody needs to have access to. I mean, they are. It makes your life so much easier. Where do you start the process with the new person, though? Just briefly, where do we start?
So everyone that works with me starts off with a discovery call. So we'll jump on the phone for 20 or 30 minutes. I'll find out what's going on in your life, your business, your career that's kind of got you in a tailspin. See how I could possibly be a contribution to you of getting you out of that tailspin. If we're a good fit to work together, we'll talk more about that. And if you don't feel like I'm someone that can help you, I don't do high pressure sales. Most people either know that I can help them or they don't. So I empower you to choose what will work for you.
And you have all of that information on livingbeyondlogic.com of how to get a hold of you. And yes, we're going to be discussing more of your strategies in upcoming episodes. So stay tuned to Time to Fly podcast. We greatly appreciate you listening in today. And if Jill can be of help to you, setting those boundaries, saying no, figuring out what's light, get a hold of her. Thank you for joining us today.
A big thank you to this episode's sponsor, Beyond Logic Coaching and Consulting. Be sure to get your free gift at livingbeyondlogic.com.
Join our flock. Stay informed of all things Time to Fly by subscribing to our newsletter at timetoflypodcast.com. And be sure to tune in to our next show.